I think we are live, and that camera is mighty crooked. Let's see. All right, close enough.
We'll make it work.
It's close. It's horseshoes close. All right. Well, good morning. Good morning, Mark.
What's up? What's up? Good morning.
How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good.
I am too. I just got back from a trip, long needed trip, um, to Cancun,
Yep.
to Mexico. That was nice. It was one of those topics that probably ties in well to what we're going to talk about today,
Okay.
and I'll come back to that. But I think today's topic is going to be a little different than our first episode, just by nature of the subject matter.
Right.
And we're just going to jump on in. So for those of you who are watching for the first time, checking us out, this is Mark. I'm Burrell, and we are two brothers talking. And you can check out the intro if you want to learn more about kind of why we're doing this podcast and what it is we're even just feeling called to accomplish. But I think as you jump into that, this episode will probably make a whole lot more sense. So we're gonna jump right on in. Um, our our episode today is centered around discussing the matter of men owning their own life experience and people, frankly, like nothing we're talking about is only qualifying for men. We'll probably just be speaking more from a man's perspective.
Right.
But everything we say today really qualifies for anyone who is interested in applying new tools to their lives
Yep.
and looking to improve their mental and spiritual, physical, emotional health. Right.
Yep.
So owning your life experience really centers around the specific kind of subtopic is a victim mentality. How do you recognize you have it? What do you do about it when you recognize you have it? Why does that work against you, et cetera? So we're just gonna jump right in. I guess maybe first things first is kind of defining what a victim mentality is, and maybe when we say owning your own life experience, what that is too,
Yeah.
because that can mean a lot of different things for different people. The way that we're defining it, and Mark, I'd love to hear your reaction to this definition.
Okay.
But the way that I would define a life experience is, what is your level of purpose in life,
Okay.
your understanding of that purpose, your positioning of delivering against that purpose. How fulfilled do you feel versus that purpose? Um, I would also say that from a Christian perspective, what is your relationship with God like?
Okay.
Right,
Wait. Now you're defining. What are you
the
defining again?
owning your life experience.
Okay. Go. Okay.
So like the purpose you have, your relationship with God, and your relationship with those around you. Like that's kind of the general context of life experience as most tend to look at it, right?
Yeah.
Um Alternatively, life experience wouldn't mean a whole lot if you lived in a bubble.
Right.
So and you didn't talk to God.
Right.
Like that it wouldn't be worth a whole lot, potentially. So then I guess the victim mentality, just defining that a little bit, is more centered around whose fault do you feel things are when it doesn't go your way,
Okay.
right?
Yep.
um is there a fault,
Yep.
right? So that's those are kind of the two definitions that we'll be speaking from today.
Yeah.
And I guess, just in the spirit of attacking probably the most sensitive of those, which is the victim mentality,
Right.
right? So I guess from a biblical perspective, are there scriptures that that maybe we can ground ourselves in to start, that center around being accountable for your own life experience, like owning what you experience.
Okay. So let's. So how would you define the victim mentality piece?
Like like whose fault is it that things don't go your way, Or
Okay.
or I'll say it differently. I'll say it differently, maybe a little bit more concise. As you live life, you constantly feel like the universe is against you,
Okay.
or that people around you are against you,
Okay.
and that they're accountable for the outcomes you experience.
Right. Okay. So I'm that's a good definition. I like that. So like from a biblical perspective, I'm gonna say to some degree we're all victims. So
Mm,
and I mean it from this perspective. I was born a sinner. I had nothing to do with that. So I'm a victim of a decision that was made in the beginning.
hmm
Adam and Eve decided to disobey God, and so now I'm a victim. Just generally speaking, I come into this world a victim of somebody else's bad decisions, bad choices. If I look in the Bible, it's full of people who are actually, and I'm gonna use this term loosely, victims of God's sovereign decisions.
hmm
Apostles are, I mean, they're martyrs for what they believe.
hmm
They were chosen to go through this, to be the forerunners of this movement that is spread across the world, Christianity, the kingdom of God. So it's like they're to some degree they are victims too of God's sovereign choices for their lives. And so as a from a Christian perspective, the whole Bible is full of people who are subjected to negative situations outside of their control to some degree. So as a Christian, do I see that people go through things in life that it's like it's not their fault, a negative situation that they have no control over. That happens to all of us. So for me, like from a biblical perspective, now it becomes how do I deal with that?
hmm
I don't even necessarily want to argue with people. Do negative things happen? Are there systems that affect people differently than it affects other people? Like there are all these different things. We're victims of our how we're raised. You
hmm
know, like
hmm
all these things. We all encounter situations that impact us negatively. The real issue for us as believers is like how do we move forward? How do we respond to this? Now, from a worldly perspective, you never win.
hmm
You know, it's kind of like when am I not a victim anymore? You know, it's you become like it's like it's helplessness. I'm just always a victim of someone else's choices and decisions. But from a Christian perspective, you know, I start thinking about the words of Paul, where he says, "I can do all things through Christ, which strengthens me." And he's actually talking about the fact that good times, bad times, suffering, abundance. Like I've learned how to get through these things,
hmm
and it's through Christ who strengthens me. So, biblically speaking, like we're going to encounter suffering, uh, unfair situations, but the issue becomes as a Christian, I am strengthened by something not of this world that makes me more than a conqueror. So that's my biggest thing, biblically speaking, is like I'm not gonna argue with you. Like, are you going through stuff? Because we, you know, like now we've got to judge. Hey, this situation happened.
hmm
Who's really at fault? And we all have different perspectives on that. So it's like, but if we move past that point, which we do at some point, now it's
You
like,
hope,
am I helpless? And
right?
that's kind of how I look at it. Like, am I truly helpless?
I think that was really interesting the way you tied it back to Paul. I think as you were talking, one thing that jumped out in my mind was, you know, biblical and just practical,
Uh-huh.
because the biblical is typically very practical. Um, is just once you get to the point of choice, that is when things change.
Okay.
And I'll explain what I mean. So if if I'm a victim of um, being born into a really tough situation or family,
Right.
and then outcomes come from that, whether it's, you know, those that might check this episode out that are adopted, or at birth, or those that might have you know, addictions in their families, you know, a variety of different challenges that they might encounter. It could be mental health challenges, all kinds of things, financial challenges,
Right.
etc. So like, okay, so there's nothing you can do about that before you arrive,
Right.
but now you've arrived.
Right.
you don't have a whole lot of choice about many of those life decisions. I won't say any, I'll say many,
Right.
because as the older you get, the more choice you start to obtain. A 14-year-old in some situations, probably if they've been led to it, could potentially be called to go to church when their family doesn't, and they may get exposed to things. So those are choices, and those are great choices, or to work or other things. But once you're an adult, generally speaking,
Uh-huh.
once you're an adult, you now have full choice. Like, you can choose to be independent, as an example,
Right.
early, and get out of the situation that you're in. Now, you may not be able to get out of the city that you're in if that's what you want to do, but
Right.
you can potentially get out of the home you're in,
Right.
right? So it's, to me, at that point, it's like it goes from victim to victor, and the deciding lever there is choice.
So would you say going from victim to victor
Mhm.
is a what? What? How do you make that switch?
It's owning your experience.
Okay.
So I believe, and this is totally a feel, like, it's not like I know this for a fact for everyone.
Right.
I just know it for me, right? And I feel that it's possible for anyone, that once you get to the point of choice, you now have changed from my mom, my dad, my spouse, my family situation, my family curses in my mind, and in my, that I reflect on and I see, or I have seen. Those no longer have shackles tied to me. Like, I understand, I grew up with those. I
Right.
may even have the scar of the shackle to remember not to go back to that.
Right.
But yeah, I'm no longer shackled because I now chose that I can own that experience. I can choose not to drink or smoke or whatever it is that someone's gamble, whatever it is someone has a vice,
Right.
that has taken their family down to that degree. You can choose not to do that.
Yeah.
And I think that's that level of empowerment. And, well, really, I'll take a step back. Before you get empowered, it takes courage and faith. Like,
Yeah.
you have to have something deeper in you that decides, I'm really just kind of sick and tired of feeling like this, and I'm
Right.
going to own another experience.
So the situation, whatever it is, it probably legitimately happened.
Hmm.
Maybe in the beginning, and then over time, it can become a mindset where you see through this lens of, man, these bad things always happen to me, or these things are in place that prevent me from succeeding. And so, but like I like what you were talking about, like it being a scar, as opposed to an open wound
Right.
that people are constantly picking at. I think the victim mentality, which I think it is a mentality, is that this is an open wound that people keep messing with, as opposed to letting it be something that heals.
Hmm.
And I can handle. I'm a little stronger. I can handle these things better. I think like there are situations where, we probably heard stories where, somebody's a prisoner of war, and they're in a constant state of being mistreated, and yet like they have this positive mindset about it.
Hmm.
They wake up and they're thankful. They wake up and they're grateful. There's hope because of a loved one that they're waiting to see. So it's like, there can be, even in the presence of negative circumstances, you can still have the mentality of like, I'm an overcomer.
Hmm.
This is not going to get inside of me. Like, yes, sometimes circumstances are negatively against you, but it can also be, but I'm not going to let it get inside of me and take over and take control. And I think that's kind of the shift that we have to um, maintain. Is like, I can't let this infect me, like, on the inside.
Right.
So yeah.
The I'm gonna bring up a very practical example of how this shows up,
Okay.
and a lot of men deal with this
Okay.
that have kids.
Okay.
Okay, so if you're a man who is not with or married to or staying with your baby mama,
Okay.
okay, or baby's mama, and you are encountering challenges, or you can feel like a victim if you're encountering challenges where you feel like, for some reason or another, she is restricting your ability to father.
Right.
You can't see your child, your son or daughter or children. You can't engage with them. Whatever the circumstance is, there. I'll say it the other way. There are not a lot of dads who feel like they are fully empowered to father,
Right.
who don't live with or have their kids, staying with them.
Right.
and and that's a real thing. Like divorce, more than 50% of marriages end in divorce within 2 years. Like that's a
It's real.
that's one hell of a stat. So it's like, obviously, probably I don't know this stat, so that stat I know. I don't know this stat, but I would assume it's fairly true. Probably half of those marriages have children involved,
Right.
maybe a little bit less than half.
Right.
So that's a lot of kids in broken homes. I also grew up in a broken home, right? And I think that those dads, they really feel like victims of those situations,
Right.
either because they didn't prompt the divorce, or they were prompted to divorce for a reason they felt justified for,
Right.
right or wrong, or they can't engage with their child the way they would like,
Right.
and they blame, the mom for that in many cases. Um, I think I think where the example we were just talking about can show up, that choice,
Uh-huh.
is understanding what part of that situation you are fully empowered to control.
Right.
Like, there, not all of it, but there is a part of that circumstance you are fully empowered to control.
Right.
To get specific, the part that you are not empowered to control is her. You
Right.
you can't control her, and
Right.
she's not yours to control.
Right.
Well, first off, because she's not yours anymore. So you can't control her, and she's gonna do what she wants to do,
Right.
and she's gonna likely do those things with good intentions in her mind. And
Right.
if you assume that best intent, that's one less bag you have to carry. So now you can focus on what you can control. You can focus on how you contribute to your child in their well-being. You can focus on the type of example you set as a man, and that type of example that you set will directly impact that child's in interest and intent in wanting to be around you. And you may not get a lot of that while they're small,
Right.
because they have no choice. But as they get older, they will begin to have choice
Right.
of who they want to be around and why they want to be around them, and they will want to be around you. And that is the long game. And getting past victim mentality is the long game.
Right.
That's the most, like, practical example I could think of how many men today are challenged with a victim mentality. And since it's got to do with their kids, that's a big pillar of thought and feeling and love and baggage that they carry around, that we carry around all the time.
Right.
And we have to, like to get to overcome that, it takes a real change in mindset. It takes the ownership.
And I could see the flip side of it, where you know you ignore the things you can do because you're so focused on
Yep.
these negative circumstances, or even how you perceive it. You
Yep.
you may feel like, they're not letting me do this and not letting me do that, and it's like you're missing a lot of stuff you can be
Yep.
doing, and it actually becomes an excuse not for you to own the things that you can do.
Hmm.
And that's the struggle with the victim mentality, is like you miss a lot, and you miss see things you think are a certain way, but they're really not. But because of the filter that's here,
Hmm.
like it just screws you up, and it's like everybody suffers.
Right.
Everybody suffers. So in the United States in 2025, do you think that how do I say this? Are we really victims in 2025? Like, do you see situations where we are powerless in America? Let's just take America, where like we're really I'm generally speaking, we're really victims.
I mean, the short answer is, well, you asked two different questions.
Okay.
So you asked, are we victims? And then you said, are we really, really powerless? And I don't think those are the same thing.
Okay.
So, yes, I do think we are victims
Okay.
in 2025 in various ways. For instance, if your city, state, federal government of wherever you live, it makes a decision, you don't have anything to do with that decision, and you will be a victim of it if it is contradictory to what's good for you and your family, as an example.
Okay.
So you would be a victim in the practical sense of the word,
Okay. So
but you're not powerless.
if you say that based on how you perceive something, we're all constant victims.
Right. And yeah, you can be. So I guess that's a good clarifying question. Um and I'm gonna round out that second part of the last question you asked just before I go past it.
Okay.
Because I you asked it and I don't want to miss it.
Gotcha.
So are we powerless? No. There's no circumstance where we're powerless, because if you can pray, you're not powerless.
Okay.
So like I just don't believe in a powerless mindset. I don't believe that circumstance exists. I can't believe that. And maybe that's just the only thread sometimes in my weaker moments that makes me not believe that is faith. And that's all I have to lean on. But that's all I need to lean on.
Okay. I'm good
Right.
with that.
So that's kind of what my thought is there. But going back to your last question, I guess the way I would look at it is we're always we're always in position to be a victim.
Because
It doesn't mean we have to accept the victim role and
okay.
title, right? So real small example, you're in traffic and someone cuts you off, right? You are in now a position to be a victim of that person's bad decision because they woke up this morning looking for your car to cut you off.
Right.
Or it's no offense, a little old lady who says got a hard time seeing. She just didn't see you there. It was no malice. It was no like big, agenda that she woke up with to come cut you off. It was just an accident.
Right.
And you can just decide to interpret it that way.
Yep.
But you were positioned in that moment to be a victim
Yep.
and to get really upset. And if you're in Texas, maybe more. Like, you might bump a car. Who knows? Give her the bird.
Yep.
I don't know, but
Anything goes.
anything goes. So I think you're always positioned to be a victim.
Yep.
But what that does also to me is that gives you a choice to win every time.
Okay.
Like you can be a constant winner if you put on your victim opportunity radar and you see those opportunities to be victims, and you could see them coming like a missile in the water, and you can just thwart them. You could just make a decision to dodge it or to flip it and turn it around into a win for you and someone else. That's like as many opportunities as you have to feel like a victim, you have that many opportunities to be a victor for you and someone else. It's just I'm saying it like it's a sentence because it's easy.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
easy.
I was thinking that's a different mindset that most people they don't have in the world today.
Right.
Because it's to maturely look at a situation and look at the positive from it and to respond in a positive way and have a good attitude and to overcome it. We're not being wired for that.
Right.
We're wired for it's your fault. I
Hmm.
blame you, and I would be in a better spot, but you're preventing me from growing. You're preventing me from moving forward. That's a
Mm,
totally different mindset from what we're being fed on a daily basis.
agreed. Agreed. Well, why do you think that is though? What's feeding that opposite mindset?
Manipulation.
Oh, say
Uh,
say more about that. You might have just struck a chord for somebody.
I mean, it just depends on what we're talking about, but in general, the media is constantly manipulating this world for the sake of probably money, for the sake of ratings. Like I think it's just how it is. And so once you give that to people, you feed them that they'll take it from there.
Mm,
Like you're the victim, and you're always it's just like we don't as a society progress with that kind of mindset, and we have to figure out. I say we specifically us as believers, we have to
okay.
figure out how to move forward in a positive way where we kind of counteract this victim
Mm,
mindset. And I think that is the responsibility of those who have a more mature mindset is that you need to go rescue people. You need to infect in a positive way those that who need to shift the way they see life,
mm-hmm.
especially as like if anybody had a complaint, it'd be the early church, how they were persecuted. And like if you want to, you could blame God. Like you could be in those same situations and say, God, I hate you. Like why in the world am I being thrown into prison? Why in the world? So like at some point as a believer, it does come down to prayer. It does come down to my faith, my hope in Christ. Like this world is not it. This is not my all in all. Like there is something more that I'm aiming for.
Mm-hmm.
That sense of purpose. Like all these things counteract the fact that hey, I might work in an environment where my boss does not like me, or he's a hateful
Hmm.
person, or what are you feeling? Whatever your
Mm-hmm.
thing is that makes you feel helpless, realizing, oh, but I have the spirit of God living inside of me. Like the spirit, the fruit of the spirit, they should flow from my life. Does it change? Will it automatically fix my situation? No. But there is a sense of purpose that is able to counteract this sense of helplessness and victimhood that this world is constantly introducing to us. But again, that's man, that's just a mature mindset that a lot of people aren't even interested in. Like it's so much easier to be the helpless person, right?
Mm-hmm.
To not take accountability for what you can do, to not own the mistake that you have made. Because the flip side of it is sometimes I am a victim, but sometimes I'm on the other end of that thing.
Mm-hmm.
And very rarely do we see this piece here where
Right.
I'm causing the damage, I'm causing the trauma.
Right.
Like we're gonna judge it. You gotta judge it with a righteous judgment. Most people can only see how other people are negatively affecting them, never seeing like the other side of it. And I think that's what's got to take place.
It does. Yeah. That's a good way to put it. I guess how does one recognize? Well, how do you feel like one recognizes that they're they're caught up in that cycle, right? Because that what you just described is it sounds like a cycle, like it's an ongoing rhythm, and I think I do feel like a lot of what you said, I could think of examples like as you were talking about how like either media is interested in money, so then something's projected in a certain way and that might make you feel victimized. They may show you something from another city, state, country, and it makes you feel victimized based on who you are and your ethnic background or your gender or lots of things you see really are intended to strike a chord in you emotionally, and it's usually not positive.
Right.
So I could think of those examples as you were talking, and I guess how do you recognize you're in that rhythm of being constantly presented with this, with these victim seeds, you know what I mean, or how you're being victimized, maybe is the right way to put it.
Well, I think use the word rhythm or cycle. So when I see myself constantly revisiting the same emotion of frustration, blaming someone for my problems, like all these different things, when I see this cycle, when I see it repeating in my life, at some point for myself, if I see myself going through the same thing over and over, I'm gonna ask myself like, why are you so angry?
Mm,
Why are you so frustrated? Why are we still here? And then I'm a thinker, so I'm just gonna sit and process like okay, what is triggering these things that happen? Like why do they keep happening? If I see myself going through the same thing over and over, I start asking questions. And so I think that's a good starting point. Is like if you're able to recognize that there's this cycle happening in your life, then you gotta be brave enough, courageous enough to
mm,
say, like, why is this happening? Now, for the victim mindset, it's just gonna automatically blame XYZ.
right.
Okay. Well, if that, then you got to say, well, how do I solve it? How do I
Right.
fix it? Well, again, like the victim is probably going to be like, I can't ever fix this. It's just going to always be this way, and I can't. You can't do much with that. Like that's just the reality. There's an aspect of society that you cannot fix,
Right.
right? Like you mentioned, like certain people strike a chord to stir up stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way this world works. Like every election, we're stirring each other. We're rallying our troops for this fight.
Right.
And it's like you're not gonna win that battle. It's
No.
just like here's your turn, now it's our turn. It's your turn, now it's our turn. It's a cycle. This we go through these cycles. So it's like I watch the cycle so much that I'm kind of like, oh, I'm not interested in that anymore. Well, then what are you gonna do about it? That's a good question. Let me think on that. Let me see what can I do to stop the cycle in me.
In you. Yeah.
Right. I can't help what's going on in the world, but I'm not gonna be going through this emotional cycle of always blaming somebody else. I'm helpless because I just know too much. right? The spiritual world controls this natural world.
Hmm.
So when I realized that, it's not like not being practical. It's like, well, what's real is that what the unseen world is controlling the seen world.
Mm-hmm.
So what am I able to do about that in my own, within myself, within my family, within my community, and God if God allows it, how can I impact that in this world? And I'm just going to be obedient to that purpose, because if I can see something to that degree, then it's like God is he's kind of orchestrating some things. He's kind of allowing me to see something. So now now it becomes a responsibility,
Mm-hmm.
because I think ultimately, like, the person who has been a victim, at some point, when you move from being a victim to a victor, and I'm not trying to use kind of trying to avoid the cliche,
Yeah.
but when I go from a victim to victor, now I have a responsibility, right? And so now I have a responsibility to try to break these cycles that I'm seeing happening in the
Mm-hmm.
world.
Mm-hmm.
Let me say I'll say this one more thing. The fact that I was born in the United States of America, born in the home that I was born in, I had nothing to do with that. You mentioned that earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I could have easily been born in some third world country where I never heard about Jesus, never
Mm-hmm.
will hear about Jesus, and literally am a subject of the environment I've been born into.
Mm-hmm.
But I've been given the opportunity to be born in this country that I have a lot of freedoms.
Yeah.
And so now I also have a lot of responsibility. So I think at some point, um, when we do move from victim to having a different mindset of that of a overcomer, victor, um, a warrior. I might not win, but I'm gonna fight. I'm gonna get in this fight and try to help somebody. I think that is our responsibility as believers, is to make that shift and to go into action.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody can just say, like, man, I'm not a victim anymore. Like, you guys should do better. I need to see you need to get into that fight and help
Right.
somebody.
Right.
Because I mean, it sounds good, but like there is a practical piece to all of this. So I
Hundred
mean, that's
percent.
kind of where I would go with it.
100%.
Yeah.
I guess so. Two things that kind of relate to what, or directly relate to what you just said. One is, I think about like I asked you a question, and I'll answer the same question, which is like, how do you know that you're in the cycle and the rhythm,
Mhm.
and what do you do about it? It's kind of where you took that, which is perfect. So I guess one way you know is if you feel like you are carrying lots of emotional bags. Just that simple. Like like if you're carrying a lot of emotional bags because you have so much greatness going on around you, it doesn't feel very heavy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's not the stuff that's heavy.
Yep.
The stuff that's heavy is what you feel is happening to you,
Yeah.
right? It's happening to you. You are along for the ride. You're in the passenger seat in those situations.
Yeah.
And those bags are heavy.
Yeah.
And God gave you two hands. So I don't know if you've ever been to the airport, but you are not meant to carry 20 bags.
Right.
It's just you just can't. But we try to do that emotionally. And it's unfortunate. It is it in my opinion, it is a form of self-sabotage that we were taught growing up because our parents did it and their parents did it, and we watched it, and we watched it low key, so we didn't really see it called out. We just saw the behavior and the mindset, and that was passed on,
Right.
right? And all of us have experienced that. So then we have to try to recognize that in the moment
Yeah.
that's happening. The the other thing that came to mind, um and then I'd love to kind of pivot us to some of the things that we can do to overcome it.
Okay.
um One of the things that came to mind as you were sharing was like the labels, right? And I know I started us down this path, so I'll take responsibility for it. So
Okay.
like the victim and victor and those things, the overcomer you mentioned, another great way to, a great position to be in and that you have to choose to be in. I guess I don't know how. I'm not even gonna like give someone credit because I don't know who other than God. I don't know who to give the credit to.
Right.
Maybe my grandmother. Because I did have her for a while as a child. Like long enough for me to be able to remember the time I spent with her, and we spent a lot of time in church.
Right.
And one of the things that the church I went to really focused on, um which is the church was called Night Chapel AME Church in North Dallas, or in near Love Field in Dallas. That that church really focused on the power of men. Like we had a very man focused pastor in that church, and not like chauvinist kind of man focused. What I mean is like it's your job to step up,
Right.
like that was his daily rhythm, and he was not liked by some, and for that, but I'll tell you who loved him. It wasn't the men as much, it was the women.
Really.
The women really appreciated him challenging men
Yeah.
and forcing us to step up. And I walked away from that church, tying that back to your point. I walked away from that church as a young teenager, early teens, understanding that all of us have a definition and a vision of what a man is in our head.
Right.
And as men, we try to live up to that. Or we feel victimized because we can't. And we haven't, let's say.
Right.
Um, but either way, like you have this vision in your head, and I have a definition of what a man is in my head. And by definition, like I don't think an overcomer has to be stated separately.
What's
Like
that?
a man is a victor.
Gotcha.
Like you were built to win. You were built to overcome. You ever notice how there's no problem? This is not how my wife thinks, my daughter thinks. They have their own gifts.
Right.
They do not think this way. And sometimes it's to my detriment. I think this way. But every single problem that crosses my path, I cannot let it pass without trying to solve it,
Right.
without trying to beat it.
Right.
Like, and it's usually not for any benefit of me. Like it's other people's problems. And I'm interested enough to, well, why is that happening to you? Well, hey, you want to talk about it? Like, let's talk about it. Or I got 20 minutes on so and so day. Let's have a discussion, and if I can offer you some input, or if you just want me to listen, I'll, I'll help. Like, I feel obligated that as a man, not because of any other reason. Like, men are, by my definition that I was taught, are built to win, to solve, to overcome. And once you become that, when there's enough of you that become that, it's a circle of control. So my little circle of control is just me. I'm the only one I can control.
Okay.
I can't control my wife. I can't control my kids. They're not for me to control.
Right.
So since I, like you said earlier, I get myself in order,
Yep.
right? And you're never in perfect order,
Right.
but you just try to be in order enough to fulfill that purpose, right? So I get myself in order. Then I have a circle of influence where I can't control anything in that circle, but I can definitely influence it.
Right.
I can influence what happens in my home, right? I can influence that. I can influence my wife. I can influence my kids. I can influence guests that come over. I can't control them.
Yeah.
And then there's a circle of concern beyond that. Those are things I have zero influence and zero control over.
Right.
And I should spend as little time in that circle as I can. Does that make sense?
Makes good sense because I was reminded of a situation or a couple of situations where I've been in where um, I felt like I was subtly being victimized, but also I'm wrestling with the opportunity to have influence,
Mm-hmm.
and so then you kind of use your influence to impact the environment that you're in, your circle of influence, with this environment that you're in, like you're using this opportunity to influence it. But then at some point, you realize I can only do so much.
Mm-hmm.
And so then it's like, do I move on? Because then at some point, I think you can become a victim, and then you start to take that on. You start to take that on mentally, and it's like I can't. At some point, you realize you're no longer able to impact the environment that you're in. So it's like, are there moments where it's like it is time to move on? Where it's like I can't fix this as a
Mm-hmm.
man. I'm like I can't fix all the problems. So then how do I deal with that without becoming a victim or taking on this victim mindset?
I think so. I can only share what I do, and man, it is hard. I haven't found a better answer.
Okay.
And that's, I have to decide with prayer, like with real constant conversation with God, I have to decide what I'm supposed to accept.
Okay.
So there are problems every day that come up, that whether it's at work or it's at home. Um, every man who's been with a woman understands that you're not going to win every battle in conversation. So it could be a conversation with my wife, and I have to decide like what to accept and what not to accept. And and what I don't accept, I take accountability to change. What I do accept, I give that to God. And I'll give you an example. So let's say something comes up and I feel obligated to go fix it, right? So it could be, you know, my son's he's having a problem with his car.
Okay.
My son's a grown man. He can fix his car,
Right.
but he's also my son, and I feel obligated to go help him at times.
Right.
Let's say it's a really really big problem, and I don't know what to do with the car because I don't have the money, or and he doesn't have the money, and we can't get it taken care of. I sometimes have to stop fixing and pray more. Or sometimes I haven't even prayed about it, and I have to pray in the first place.
Right.
Take a step back and just ask God, like, what am I supposed to do here? Anything? Like, do you have something working that I don't understand?
Right.
I don't know what to do here. And just take a step back and just let him do God, because he can do it way better than any of us can. And I feel, I think sometimes I'm so interested in solving it, I just keep trying to solve. And there was a period in my life where I would have like worried myself to death trying to solve a problem for myself, my son, my daughter, my wife. And now I just take a step back and I accept that the problem might not be mine to solve.
You said a lot because I'm thinking, especially when the problem is impacting me,
Mm-hmm.
and then I can't fix it.
Mm-hmm.
Then you say you give it to God. What happens if I keep it?
I mean, the simple answer, in my opinion, is what happens when someone gives you 100 pounds. Can you pick up 100 pounds?
Can I pick?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Can you pick up 200?
Depends on how you want to.
And okay, you're holding 200. Let's say that's what you can do.
Okay.
You're holding 200, and someone, without you putting that 200 down, stacks another 100 on top of it. What happens?
I'm I'm gonna fall. Or I'm gonna drop it, or is this too much?
It's too much.
Right.
So that's what happens if I try to keep it.
So
You crumble.
the person who put the extra 100 on there, the temptation is going to be, now I'm blaming you.
Yep.
It's your fault.
Yep.
Or so if you take a relationship, with your spouse, there's something I can't fix, and if I'm not giving this to God, then I'm blaming you.
Mm-hmm.
And now we got a 50% divorce rate in the world because I'm divorcing this person because they victimized me. They're not doing their part, and now I'm out.
Mm-hmm.
And but sometimes the giving it to God just it can come off in a world where we have like all these different options and solutions, and we're always trying to fix stuff and make things better, and we want to make it better so I can feel better.
Mm-hmm.
This giving it to God and being stuck and being uncomfortable and suffering, however you define suffering, that's just not, it's not easy.
It's not, but I think, I think it comes with a cost also, right? So for instance, when you, like, last time I checked, no human being can grow a plant without putting it in dirt or in earth to make it grow, or planting that seed, right? You have parts to do in that. You have parts to do. If any of you have planted a tree or a fruit plant, you're gonna go put that plant or seed into dirt. You're gonna water it, but what's happening under that dirt, you have no visibility to. You have no control over.
right,
It's not yours to do anything with at that point, but the task that you were asked to do, and you tied it to a life situation
right.
asked to do by God. That's it. And it might just be to have patience and to do the small little things that you're supposed to do. And he will manifest out of that what it is that should come from it. And it's not yours to hurry the tree to grow. Like there's no amount of watering and action you can take to make that happen differently. It's going to happen the way it's going to happen. And maybe that's what I didn't say well earlier. That's what I have to accept, is that it's going to happen the way it's going to happen, and that I accept he has control.
Yeah.
And where I don't, I know he does no matter what. So it through faith, I have to give that to him and still do my part, because faith without works is dead. So I don't believe that I've had many, I won't say any, but I haven't had many circumstances where I was totally unburdened with any task. Like usually I was burdened with something,
Right.
even if it's just a little watering, just a little occasional watering. Like that might be all I'm supposed to do
Yeah.
for a behemoth of a problem, right? And it just, and my effort doesn't match the problem,
Yeah.
and it's like this is never going to get solved. But that's where the faith comes in, and you don't have to be like Jesus himself. You can't be like, so you don't have to have this like this this faith. Even Jesus's faith, the way that I interpret it, wavered. Like he trusted God and he had adequate faith, but there were moments where he asked God to unburden him,
Right. Right.
right? And because it is hard, it
Yeah.
is it is very hard. Like this human life is difficult.
Jesus was for lack of a better word, he was a victim
Yep.
of the will of his father's plan.
Hmm.
At the point you suffer, you can either just accept this is my plight in life for whatever reason for this season. This is my plight, or you're gonna blame somebody because you don't like it.
Right.
I
Right.
don't I don't when you talk about suffering, I think that's a struggle for every most people don't like to suffer. I mean, unless you're talking about like being in the gym and like having this certain kind of
The
mindset of
glutton
like,
for punishment.
yeah, yeah. But outside of that, at some point, I reached my limits of suffering, and now I gotta somebody else is gonna suffer. You know, like hurt people,
Right.
suffering people want somebody
Make
to.
other people
Yeah,
suffer.
it's like this is your fault, and I'm coming for you. You
Right.
know, you earlier you were talking about pivoting. You were gonna
Hmm.
pivot our conversation.
Hmm.
So how do we kind of put a bow on this package?
So I think it does come down because we did just describe men as fixers, so we can't help ourselves but offer some solutions,
Uh,
like, and we're obligated to. So I guess a few thoughts. One is, going back to the circle of control, circle of influence, and circle of concern. That that tool can be really helpful. um I would even suggest like, if for every man who doesn't do this today, to start doing it, is to journal and start your journal process with that circle.
uh,
So draw a circle. You probably gonna need to do it on a whiteboard, right? Or you can do it on a computer
uh,
because you have infinite space there. Draw a small circle. That is your circle of control. Label it, and in that circle, I challenge you to type in or write in the things that you have control over. What can you actually make happen and not happen? Okay, start there. I think that'll be very challenging for most men the first time, because most of the things they put in that circle they have no control over, and they're going to leave out things that they should have control over.
do I hate to throw off your
Yeah, go ahead.
thought, but
I'll remember it.
I mean, what do we really have control over?
Great question. So, whenever I need a reminder,
Mhm.
or when I'm illustrating this tool to either young men or executives, or like, there is no amount of money or level of a role or age that makes this tool ineffective. It's effective in every facet. You can apply it, right? So whenever I'm going through this tool, one of the first things when I do it for myself is my reaction. It's the first thing I write down. And I did not write that down for years when I was using this tool. When somebody showed it to me,
Mm.
I didn't think that was fully in my control. If if you if you stepped on my foot, I felt that you were in control. I didn't know this at the time. I didn't understand it fully, but this is looking back. This is the way I was operating. I felt like you were in control of what comes out of that
Right.
because you did the stepping.
Right.
That's untrue.
Right.
100% untrue. I was 1,000% in control of my response,
Yeah.
starting with my assumption that you did it on purpose,
Yeah.
or you're so entitled you didn't think you needed to apologize. Well, I didn't look up and realize that you had a cane and you were blind. There was no intent.
And that's a powerful thing because I think about it. This a situation I was in one time. I was working at a homeless shelter, and this guy who's obviously mentally challenged, he came in and he just had an episode.
Mm-hmm.
And this brother called me every name in the book, every racial slur. He talked about my wife, kids, anything you can think of. He said it to me in that moment, and I'm just looking at him, and I
Mm-hmm.
realized he, I was power. I can control my response, and I just realized like this guy has mental. He's got a mental problem,
Yeah,
and I don't have to be pulled into what he's going through right now.
correct.
And that was the most empowering thing I've experienced in a long time because it was like I was in control of my emotional response to what was happening in that moment. And that's people don't realize like we've lost that simple control of how I respond to whatever you do to me. We've lost control of that. And it's like that's a very scary place.
Well, so here's one reason. It's probably many reasons.
Uh-huh.
Here's one reason I feel like we've not lost control. We gave it up, and we continually give it up daily, voluntarily,
Mm.
because being a victim is a nice warm blanket that keeps you from ever feeling the cold of accountability.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're not accountable if you're the victim, right? You're just not. And that's a very common way to think today. And it's a really hard way to change.
Yeah.
But ooh, when you change it, you realize that warm blanket was actually like it was really just you and Satan having a pact to keep you from being your best you.
Yeah.
It's really what it was. And I'm not gonna put it on Satan because I know that's his intent is to kill, steal, and destroy. But at the same time, we don't help. We don't do no help. Like we're doing it to ourselves. We recognize it, and we still will keep doing it.
Yeah.
Right. So I guess to close out the that control. Another example. You asked like, what do we really control?
Uh-huh.
I think we control our growth. Right. Learning. You can go to a school for 50 years and learn nothing until you choose to learn it. Like it's your choice to learn.
Yeah.
It is your choice to grow. And most adults don't grow. They thought growth stopped in 12th grade or in college. They don't grow. I've done more growing. I'm so thankful for it. I've done more growing since I was 30, 46 now, since I was 30
Yeah.
than I did before that in the places that mattered in my life, right? So like your growth should accelerate. It shouldn't decelerate.
So you're saying these negative things that we experience in life, they're opportunities really to grow,
Yep.
to change, to grow, to learn. No matter who's at fault,
Right.
it's still an opportunity to mature and grow.
Right.
Yeah.
Those opportunities, I don't want to make it sound super fluffy because it's like, oh well, if you just get a positive attitude, you can grow. Like, no, that's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You just going back to that tree analogy or a plant analogy, you're gonna get dirty.
Yeah.
Like it is hell on wheels trying to, especially a big situation, trying to handle it in that way.
Yeah.
It is really tough. And you are going to get dirt all over you, but you're gonna have fruit after though. Like it's worth it. The outcome is worth it, because the alternative is don't plan anything and just be pissed that you can't eat
Yeah.
or you have no shade, right? Like that. It's really a choice of the two pains, because there's neither of those situations are painless.
Right.
So it's the choice of the two pains. Do you want the pain that has a yield, or do you want the pain that only begets more pain?
Yeah.
Right. So I guess the circle of influence, that's the second thing I would challenge, anyone listening, man or woman for that matter, to do, is to write that circle of influence. And to be clear, the circle of control is the inner circle. The circle of influence goes around the circle of control. So there is a band that gets created, right? And
That
that's your circle of influence.
overlaps.
No, they don't
Okay.
overlap.
Okay.
So they're inclusive of one another. So
Okay.
imagine,
So you got a circle within a circle.
correct,
Okay.
circle within a circle. So you're gonna have three circles.
Gotcha.
So then your second circle is the circle of influence. And so inside of the inner circles are your controls. What do you control? You'll find that a lot of that stuff's inside of you, and
Okay.
and your actions, right? If if you have somebody else's actions in there, you're wrong. I can't control Mark's actions. Mark can't control mine. We can't control our wives. Like, so it's probably not in your circle of control.
Yeah.
So circle of influence, that's where you'll have things that are centered around your behavior, but you don't actually control the outcome. And an example of what might be there for those managers, out there that might hear this, um, you may think the people under your stewardship are in your circle of control. They are not. If you've managed a person before, you cannot control what they do or say or think, and nor should you try to.
Yeah.
You can influence them. The people in your stewardship will be under your circle of influence.
Yeah.
Your family is your circle of influence, right? If your kid doesn't live in your home anymore and is an adult, that might be and they may wind up in your circle of concern. They might not even be, depending on your relationship with them, you may not even be able to influence them.
Right.
They've just turned that off, or circumstances have turned it off,
Yeah.
right? And now that could change. You can work back into that, today it might not be in your circle of influence.
Yeah.
And then finally, there's your circle of concern. Your circle of concern will likely have the most things, and that is no less important than your circle of control. The circle of concern and writing those things in that circle, you know, um, government decisions, um, angst about things that are happening in your neighborhood. Um, you know, my my family says this about me. My baby mama's doing this. I write those things down because you're thinking about them.
Yeah.
Write them in there, and looking at that map of where you spend your emotional and mental energy is a powerful tool, because when you fill it up, you'll realize that you're spending a lot less time in the circle of control and you're spending a lot of time in the circle of concern,
Yeah.
and you need to work to flip that.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It made total sense, and it actually brought me to this conclusion in my mind. It was like, okay, so I don't. What I truly can control is what's going on inside of me, and the person who controls everything else, or who has the greatest influence on the situation, is the person I need to be spending the most time with.
Mm-hmm.
Which is
Mm-hmm.
which is why prayer is so important, because I can't control the government. I can vote, but even then, I don't know what's happening behind the scenes.
Right.
I can't control my kids. I can influence them. I can give them advice, but they're going to do what they want to do. And so it's like, at the end of the day, I know I can. This brother right here can continue to grow mentally, spiritually, physically, and then I can continue to grow this relationship with God. Those are the two things in my life that I have the most say in, and probably should get most of my attention. I think if I do that, my influence is going to probably grow, and I'm going to have a greater impact in the lives of those that are around me. I'm never going to be able to control it, but that's why I pray. Like, I know I could. I went to a funeral last week, and it's like, man, this person was pretty young, not too much
Mm-hmm.
older than I am.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I say pretty young. And it's like, man, they're gone, and now their wife and kids are now victims of being this person being taken from this world, and that person had no say when that day comes. So it's like, man, understand that's like I can only control like spiritually and emotionally like what's going on inside of me, and then I can continue to grow in my relationship with God, and I'm gonna have to just trust Him with the rest of this stuff. Are there real life situations that happen to people where there are legitimate victims? Yes.
Of course.
Like
Yeah.
we can list a lot of stuff,
Yeah.
very painful stuff that people experience on a day-to-day basis. But you can't ever, the fact that I'm a victim means I had no control. I couldn't stop it. Right. So it's like I probably need to put most of my energy into things that I can impact the most, which is like how I'm going to react when life hits, because I
Hmm.
can't control life. And then I'm the person who is in control, who can prevent or allow certain things to happen in my life, or who can use it. All things work together for good for
Yep.
those who love God and are called according to His purpose. Like I need to grow in my spiritual trust in the fact that He's got this.
Hmm.
Those are, if I can do those two things for me, I'm like, I'm gonna be in the best place I can be in when all this other stuff is happening all around me that I really can't control. It's just like that's kind of where I land. As I was listening to you talk, I was like, man, because as you were describing the circle, these different circles, I'm like, I don't really control anything, and so now what do I do with that? I mean, I can do the blame game forever,
Yeah. All day.
but it doesn't change anything.
Hmm.
But what I can do is I can change as a person, and I can grow, and then I can give all this. That's why I was asking you what happens when a person doesn't give it to God. You know, if you give it to God, now it moves from a place of like I can't control it and I'm frustrated and I need somebody to blame and to suffer with me to, you know what, God is, I trust you.
Hmm.
I trust you to handle this the best way you see fit, and I'm gonna have to be at peace with that. If I can make peace with that, then it makes life bearable. It makes life like doable. So
Yeah. I think even doing that, what you just described, it can be better than bearable. It can, like as you were saying that, I feel like you could find joy in that.
mm,
You can actually find like real joy
yeah,
in accepting God's will, in accepting His grace, because deep down most of us don't feel worthy of it.
yeah,
Accepting it, and then being as much of a beacon of that grace toward everyone else and your circumstances as you can.
yeah,
Like that's all, that's what you can do.
yeah,
And it's interesting because all of the men in the Bible that did great things, if you take a step back and you look at many of those circumstances in which they did those things, they were stewards, not controllers. Like they were influencers.
mm,
They were influencers,
yeah,
either through their behavior or their action, or lack of action. Maybe they had restraint. There's lots of circumstances that come to mind that they were really just empowered stewards, and they accepted that.
yeah,
They didn't need to be the biggest and the baddest. They knew God was the biggest and the baddest. They
right,
they they let Him do that, but they also made sure they were positioned on a behavioral level and a spiritual level, so that He could do that and work that work around them, right? And that's I think, like, maybe that's a great place to kind of have a punchline,
yeah,
is that we have to do the work in ourselves, because that's what we control. And you can do a lot of work in yourself when you realize you control
yeah,
that you control that outcome.
yeah,
You can do a lot of work, a lot of growth, and that doesn't mean that you're accepting that you're not good today, or that you're not worthy today.
right,
It's not what you're accepting. You're just accepting that God's grace can make you better.
yeah. I, I love what you see when you kind of piggyback what I was saying. You kind of brought it. You kind of challenged what I had said, where you're like, you can have joy. I never seen a happy victim.
Yeah.
Victims are not, they're not in a good place
Mm-mm.
normally.
Mm-mm.
But I can have joy as I go through this hard life,
Mm-hmm.
and that's an encouragement. I'm like, I want the joy.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to be. I don't. I'm not gonna always be happy, but I've seen very mature. I specifically think about my mom.
Hmm.
She has joy. Life is not perfect, but she has. I always see her with joy, no matter what we're going through. She has this peace and this joy, and I'm
Yep.
like, I want that.
Hmm.
It's hard to get that if you're a victim.
It
It's hard.
really is.
Yeah.
It really is. Well, I think one, we just hope that this is blessing somebody, and we're thankful that that we were able to actually go as long as we did, and honestly, like our plan is to keep these as long and short as they need to be.
Yeah.
We'll let God lead us. But we were able to get some extra time in. We'll cut this up, of course, so that those that maybe don't have as much time are able to to watch it. But we hope that this blesses somebody, and we'll catch you on the next episode 2 weeks from now. We thank y'all.